This boldness that the people have nowadays. And this we've mentioned before on some occasions. And Shaykh al-Uthaymeen, he mentioned it often too, regarding enjoining the good and forbidding the evil generally. Sometimes a person learns something. You learn something. And even what you learn is probably only one aspect of that issue. Then when you see somebody doing something different, you jump onto that person like a predatory animal. That, oh brother, what are you doing? Have you not heard about the hadith where you're supposed to do this and you're supposed to do that? Were you not at the lesson last week when we learned you don't do it this way? Instantly finish the person off. Do the Islamic slaughtering to eat. So here the scholars, they say you have to have a degree of good behavior in that, enjoining the good and forbidding the evil. Because sometimes it could be the case. It could be the case that what you see is not actually even an evil. Because one of the prerequisites of enjoining the good and forbidding the evil is that the person doing it has to have knowledge and evidence and proof and understanding that such and such an act that he's just seen is an evil, and that he needs to go and refute it or prohibit it. Without having the knowledge, is that really something prohibited in Islam or not? How are you going to go and prohibit it? You have to have knowledge of what is to be enjoined so you can enjoin it, and have knowledge of what is to be prohibited so you can prohibit it. That's the first thing. Secondly, even if you have knowledge of that, then you have to have knowledge that this particular scenario and circumstance requires the rulings to be implemented upon it. You may know the rulings, you've got the knowledge, but does this scenario, are those rulings applicable to this particular scenario? Shaykh al-Uthaymeen gives an example. You've learned, as we've learned, one of the pillars of the prayer, of the obligatory prayer, is to stand, al-qiyam. Standing is a pillar, rukn. So now you come to the masjid, or at some place, wherever it may be, you see somebody praying an obligatory prayer sitting down. One of the young fit lads, mashallah. You see them sitting down praying an obligatory prayer. You think, what's this? Bulugh al-Maram, we've been studying, rukn, pillar. You have to stand for the obligatory prayers. So you go to that individual and you start telling him, Akhi, what are you doing? You've just prayed your obligatory prayer, correct? Why were you sitting down? You have to stand, pillar of the prayer. You've done it wrong, repeat your prayer. So you start enjoining the good and forbidding the evil upon this individual. But then the individual turns around and he says to you, okay brother, good, I agree with you, pillar of the prayer to stand, but look at my ankle. He moves his garment and his thobe and you see a huge bandage on it and a huge gash on it. He says, I can't stand. What do you want me to do? So now the Shaykh says, you've just done something there which is a mistake from you now. You've attempted to enjoin the good and forbid the evil in a situation where it was not applicable. Because if he has this injury on his leg and he's unable to stand, then the Sharia says he's supposed to sit. He's allowed to sit in that situation. So the scholars say it's not just about having knowledge of what is good to be enjoined and what is bad to be prohibited. You then need to have knowledge of the particular situation you're going to engage in. Are those rulings applicable to the situation or not? And these are things that people don't take into consideration often. Hence you always get the complaints from people that everybody, these brothers were so harsh on me when they were advising me about this or that. And the sisters were so harsh when they saw me doing such and such. These things are often mentioned, often. And it's amongst us. Because the people don't take into consideration these factors. Let's say all of it was in place. You know the rulings. The situation you've seen, they are fully applicable, they are. Still, the manner in which you go now to rectify that is still a third factor you need to take into consideration. So instead of going, brother, what's going on? You were in the lesson last week. You saw the ruling, why have you done it like this? That isn't the manner. You're talking to your own brothers, to your own sisters in the community. Then it's not the manner to behave. Because the problem which occurs is the individual ends up, with some cases, a feeling of elevation. That I know this ruling. He's just got it wrong. I'm going to go and explain to him you're wrong. And I'm going to show him the knowledge I've got on this issue. This is the hadith. This is the ayah. This is the ruling. This is what the scholar said. I'm not going to go and tell him these things because he obviously doesn't know. So it brings some feeling of elevation on occasion in your own self. So these types of things, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah spoke about them in detail too, regarding the affair of enjoining the good and forbidding the evil and the mannerisms of doing so, particularly amongst yourselves and amongst the commoners. And when the scholars speak about the different levels of the people in giving da'wah, so you have to keep those into consideration.